r/ask Reddit. What was the biggest scandal or dumbest screw up of a coworker that got him fired? A guy brought in his gaming laptop on the night shift to play WoW and got nothing done. One night the boss sneaks in, walks up behind him and calls our 800 number from his cell phone. The employee completely ignored the incoming call and got fired on the spot. The night manager at a job I was at for 9 years did this every single night. Instead of helping his team, he would lock himself in his office and play WoW. He also would leave all the time and go home and take a nap or go get fast food. It was really satisfying, after years of this crap, to see him finally get fired when the regional manager decided to show up in the middle of the night and he wasn't there. The manager that replaced him was an a-hole too, but at least I could respect his work ethic. I was a bank teller while I was getting through college. At our bank we had a limit system where to cash a check over a certain amount you had to have a manager override the transaction and approve the check themselves. One day I was at a new branch. We got shuffled around a lot, and someone comes in with a $25,000 check. We had enough to cash it for him, so I asked the manager to come over and take a look and override it. She didn't. Instead she was too busy texting Facebooking at her desk, so she just remote overrode it where she didn't see the check or customer and just typed in her password OK at the transaction from her own computer. Because she did this, I figured she must know the guy with the check. Maybe he's a regular, etc. So I gave him his money and he was off. A week later we find out the check was a counterfeit. She was fired on the spot for negligence because they had her on camera on her cell phone and remote overriding instead of coming over to look. You gotta kinda envy the guy that walked out with $25K. Dude used his City Arena employee ID card to get into a NBA championship game. Then, rather than chill in the corner and watch the game, he flashed his card to get past security and get courtside. Coach Carlesimo wasn't having it, called arena management and reported this Yahoo getting in the way and bugging his players. Dude lost his gig with the city, ultimately got kicked out of the union. If he'd just snuck into the game and chilled quietly, he could have watched the game and nobody would have said boo to him. But he had to push his luck till it gave out. My manager and I snuck into one of the NBA finals when Orlando was in the playoffs. We were Subway employees, so we just walked in the back like we belonged and flashed our hats to the guard. We're able to walk around the locker room and backstage areas. Finally made our way up to nosebleed behind the goal. Only one person asked us to move down. Seats didn't matter, because we pulled it off. Friend in college had an internship at some engineering company, went up to a coworker who had a banana on her desk, and loudly asked, "Do you ever use it for anything else?" Only dude I ever knew to be fired from an internship. We hired a new guy. On his first day the help desk guy is setting up his computer and the new guy asks, "Could you change my username from Scott to Williamson?" The help desk guy asked why, and he was told that's his real name. So he changed the username, then went to HR to mention it to them. I guess HRA ran their background check with his new name and found some things they didn't like, because like an hour later he's being escorted out of the office. Somebody in my warehouse hit somebody with a forklift on purpose last night, so there's that. My roommate, who did not work in the warehouse, decided to take the forklift for a joyride. She did not know how to drive a forklift, didn't hit anyone, but scared a bunch of people and got reprimanded. We had a contractor who fell asleep in front of the CEO when he was giving a tour of the facilities to the board members. Also, solitaire was on his screen instead of work. It was pretty bad. We're in a field where you have to record every little thing you do in case you get audited by the state. One of my co-workers was copy and pasting the notes for 6 straight months and skipping out on going to actually see any clients. It was found out when one of the clients called and asked a supervisor why they hadn't been seen in so long when they were supposed to be seen once a week. Every week I'm supposed to take 4 hours and do a quality spot check at the paper mill. And of course the 1 year I blow it off. This happens. Worked in a pizza shop. I was the cook and the night was winding down. One of the guys was outside smoking. He had a soda cup that our manager thought was his, so he took a sip. It was Jack and Coke. That guy was a delivery driver. I assume the manager knew and that was their slick way of proving it. Seems unnecessary. The smell of Jack and Coke is very distinct. A coworker who I trained in electronics managed to steal almost $8,000 worth of iPads. I always felt like garbage for not realizing it, but also it wasn't necessarily my job to look out for employee theft, and he seemed like such a good guy. The worst part is that they knew he was doing it but let it continue so they could charge him with a higher sentence. My friend showed me an email thread from his job. It started with a guy, I think a marketing guy, sending an email to a woman that said, "I want to see your hot kitten," or something gross. She forwarded it to the entire company and was like, "I can no longer work in this environment." The fallout was nuts. The woman left that day and I believe hired a lawyer to sue. The guy was fired on the spot. I'm not sure of the end result, as this was years ago, but hopefully that company has brushed up on their compliance training since then. A salesman at my old job would sell whatever he was selling: TVs, furniture, mattresses to customers. Then after they left he would go back into the system and give them a discount in the amount that it would take to buy another item, usually a TV, then take the TV home. Inventory matched and no one was onto him until someone came in for a refund and things didn't match up. My company has its own courier service, and during the day's work they are allowed to have a few drinks during the day, grab a meal and hand in the receipts to our accounting and be reimbursed. The drinks of course can't be alcoholic. It's like water or coffee or soda or some kind of refreshment. These courier handle money among other things, and it should have gone without saying that they can't be under the influence of alcohol during their working hours. Plus they drive, wheel. Apparently it needed to be said, because one genius went, "Hey, beer is a drink," and he bought a duck-ton of beer and tried to hand in the receipt for it to our accountant. He also had moments when he tried to hand in grocery receipts too. "You can have a meal, Bogdan. This is food." I tease a dozen raw eggs. I worked at a supermarket, and once two girls went out the back of the produce section with a bunch of fruit and veg and knives and filmed each other doing Fruit Ninja, then posted it on Snapchat. One of the girls was Snapchat friends with our manager, and 2 days later they were gone. I feel second-hand embarrassment just typing this, and I barely knew either of them. It was just so stupid. One of the salesmen told his girlfriend that he was the VP of sales. He snuck her in after hours and took her to the real VP's office. He had changed the name tag to the one from his cubicle, and they had sex on the sofa in the office. The next day he brags about it to a coworker, got fired, and the sofa was hauled away that very day. That man still tells that story over beers and thinks it was one of his greatest achievements. Security guard hated one person in the office. He carved "dumped" into her desk. She found it, reported it to HR, and they went to pull the security footage, which was mysteriously deleted for about 5 minutes in the middle of the day. It's surprising he had the conscience to delete the footage, but not the smarts to not do it in the first place. HR received an email from some random AOL account that was using our president's name as a friendly name. The email said, "Hi, I am unhappy with my bank's customer service. Can you change my direct deposit to the following?" She changed it. My first day on the job as a financial analyst at a large Blue Cross health insurance company in December 1986. It was my first job at a big company. They give me a paper report of their group accounts receivables report that's literally 2 feet thick and ask me to look at it like I'm going to see anything. So I go through the report, and later that day they ask me if I have any questions. I say, "Why are the same groups appearing 3 times in different sections of the report?" My boss says they're not. I say, "Sure they are. Let me show you." It turns out there's an error in the receivable estimating logic of the report, and it's caused the company to overestimate their accounts receivable by $75 million through November. There was a quick investigation and the corporate controller was fired before the end of the week. 2 co-workers, both married, both have kids. They're hooked up. Everyone knew or thought they knew. They agreed to both leave their SOs and hook up for real. He told his wife and kids and filed for divorce. She did the same, but her SO wanted to give it another shot. She agreed. Next day at work was a shitstorm. Guy loses his mind and OBV gets into an argument. Never physical. She is sent to a different department. He was let go. Fired. There was the guy who let himself back into the office after hours so he could watch porn on his computer. This was before people usually had home internet. He wasn't expecting our bosses to walk in with a bunch of potential investors, finding him knocking one out with his trousers round his ankles. Then there was the woman who embezzled £27,000 and spent it on Facebook games. She made very little attempt to hide what she did, so it was uncovered easily when we were audited. Or the manager who threw a staple gun at a disabled wheelchair user on his team's head. He screamed at him that he didn't know the meaning of disabled, that he had a disabled brother, and that the team member was just a lazy bastard who was trying to get out of work by making up the pain he was in. Team member subsequently found out that his pain was due to spinal cancer. Manager was fired on the spot after it happened. Apparently a dude at my company was hired into a remote position and then outsourced most of his job to someone in India. I don't know how long he kept up the charade, but the company started getting suspicious about him constantly forgetting conversations and giving different answers to the same questions. Not me, but my friend works at a tech store and his co-worker got fired because on day 3 of his job, he was found in the back huffing really expensive compressed air that the company needed a special license to have. There was a chick at my work that got caught screwing some dude in a stairwell. That wasn't as bad as the fact that she wasn't fired until it happened a second time. Hired a guy, said he knew electrical. We're a Reno company specializing in flipping dumps. Seemed like a hump to me, but he started wiring the outlets fast. I watch him for a bit and tell him to watch for the traveler on this one switch, but it seems like it's all good, so I move on. Get back half a day later and he hasn't moved on from this switch. He'd wired the traveler wrong, and when he flipped it on, I guess it was live, the breaker blew. I set the breaker and it blows again. I ask about the traveler. Yep, he did it right. We pull the switch apart. Nope, right in the hot. And you know what? Shit happens. I'm a little mad it took 6 hours and me watching him that he started backtracking his work, but I figure everyone gets a first day pass. But then he starts to blame the other workers. They all tell him to duck off, and then he starts to blame the evicted tenant. He must have snuck back in and switched him around. I told him to pack his shit and go and spent the rest of the evening doing it myself. Worked at a steel machining facility. A large steel plate would be set on a rotating electromagnetic table. The magnet would be turned on and the table would rotate so that specific tasks could be performed at duty stations. Bernie came in and turned the table on, but not the magnet. The steel plate went through an exterior wall. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.